The Tower of David, also known as the Citadel, is a fort on the west side of the Old City of Jerusalem, next to the Jaffa Gate. Contrary to its name, the Tower of David had nothing to do with the Jewish King David, who ruled both Judah and Israel sometime in the 9th century BC. The name originates from the mistaken belief by the Byzantine Christians, sometime in the 5th century AD, that this fortress was previously the palace of King David. In reality, during King David's time, the city of Jerusalem had not yet extended this far west. In fact, the original city of David, or the Jerusalem of King David, actually lies outside the present walls that enclose the old city today. With time, Jerusalem grew and extended westward over the Tyropoeon Valley to the western hill where the Tower of David is located. The Tower of David has undergone successive eras of construction, starting with the Jewish Hasmonean kings who sought to fortify the expanding city of Jerusalem. Subsequent eras, including the Herodian, Byzantine, early Muslim, Crusader and Ottoman periods, made further modifications to the existing structures. No era garners more attention than that of the Herodian period and its namesake king, Herod the Great, who ruled in the 1st century BC. Amongst one of the most interesting figures in the 1st century, Herod was a prolific builder, including the remodeling of the Second Temple, expansion of the Temple Mount, the addition of a palace to the fortress at Masada, the construction of the port city of Caesarea Maritima, and the addition of 3 massive towers at the Tower of David. Out of all the construction projects, the additions at the Tower of David were amongst Herod's first. Herod's improvements to this fortress may suggest concern for the defenses of Jerusalem, but there likely were other motives. Although Herod was the king and Jewish, he appears to have been unpopular with significant portions of the population, and even more so among the ruling elites. The first issue was the perceived non-Jewishness of his family's background. Neither his parents nor Herod himself were born in Judea. Herod was born in Idumea, which is south of Judea, to an Idumean father. His father, Antipater the Idumean, did practice the Jewish faith. His mother, Cypros, was actually an Arab Nabatean princess and was not Jewish ethnically and was unlikely to have been brought up in the Jewish faith. To add more doubt to his Jewish legitimacy, his father's family appears to have been forcibly converted to Judaism following Hasmonean conquest in the 2nd century BC, casting doubts on the authenticity of Herod's faith. Besides issues with Herod's Jewish lineage, his family's association with Rome was particularly distasteful to the people of Judea. His father, Antipater the Idumean, was an ally with none other than Julius Caesar during the Roman Civil War. In fact, Antipater the Idumean famously led a Jewish contingent, part of a larger relief force that marched on Egypt to relieve Julius Caesar, who was besieged at Alexandria. This support garnered the family favor with Julius Caesar, his general Mark Antony, Caesar's adopted son and future Emperor Octavian, and the Roman Senate. When a civil war broke out between the Jewish Hasmonean king Hyrcanus II and his nephew Antigonus II, Herod fled to Rome, supposedly to seek Roman aid to restore Hyrcanus back to the throne. Whether intentionally through the lobbying of Herod or by pure happenstance, the Roman Senate actually appointed him king of the Jews. With the aid of Roman legions provided by Mark Antony, Herod captured Jerusalem in 36 BC. A Roman puppet king of non-Jewish descent with a sordid rise to power. It's no wonder that Herod the Great took it upon himself to improve the fortifications at the Tower of David early in his reign. First, the 3 great towers he constructed served as a stark demonstration of his power to his internal political opponents, of which there were many. Second, uprising to his rule by the local population probably weighed more heavily in Herod's mind than external foreign threat. Unsurprisingly, Herod's palace in Jerusalem was adjacent to the Tower of David, which afforded quick access to it in case of uprising. The 3 massive towers mentioned earlier were named Faisal after his deceased brother, Mariamne after his second wife, more on her later, and finally a friend, Hippicus. All three of the towers were largely destroyed following the First Jewish-Roman War in the 1st century AD, with the base of the Tower of Hippicus being the only remaining Herodian remnant. If there wasn't already enough about Herod for the people of Judea to have disliked, his marriage to Mariamne, a Hasmonean princess, was a public relations disaster. Herod had already been married to a woman named Doris, whom he had a son with. To facilitate his marriage to Mariamne, he divorced and banished his old wife and son. Already a bad start in the court of public appeal. The marriage to Mariamne was intended to show up Herod's legitimacy to the throne and produce a male heir of both Herodian and Hasmonean descent that would be accepted by the people. In fact, he did have 2 sons by Mariamne, Alexander and Aristobulus. To say that the relationship between Herod and Mariamne was tumultuous would be an understatement. On at least 2 occasions, he gave orders for his wife to be killed if he himself was killed during a meeting with Mark Antony and later Octavian. Whether this order was spurred by distrust, jealousy, eternal love, or a mixture of all 3 is up for debate. Furthermore, palace rumors swirled with whispers of an affair between Mariamne and Herod's uncle. Needless to say, Herod promptly executed his uncle. When further rumors began to circulate of Mariamne and her mother Alexandra plotting to poison Herod, he had them executed as well. The Jewish author Flavius Josephus, writing in the 1st century AD, paints a complicated relationship between Herod and Mariamne. If Josephus is to be believed, Herod did in fact have affection for Mariamne and didn't view the marriage strictly as a political tool and transactional in nature. When describing Herod's order to kill his wife if he himself was killed during a meeting with Mark Antony, Flavius Josephus writes, "He therefore determined to obey his summons, for he had no possible way to avoid it. So he left his uncle Joseph procurator for his government and for public affairs, and gave him a private charge that if Antony should kill him, he also should kill Mariamne immediately. For that he had a tender affection for this his wife, and was afraid of the injury that should be offered him, if, after his death, she for her beauty should be engaged to some other man." In this passage we see hints of affection, jealousy, and politics in his order to kill Mariamne if anything befell him. Flavius Josephus further writes that after the execution of Mariamne on the orders of Herod, he was full of grief. But at this time his love to Mariamne seemed to seize him in such a peculiar manner as looked like divine vengeance upon him for the taking away her life. For he would frequently call for her and frequently lament for her in a most indecent manner. Executing Mariamne undoubtedly strained the relationship with his 2 sons by her, Alexander and Aristobulus. Both Alexander and Aristobulus had grown up at the imperial court at Rome, and therefore did not have much of a relationship with Herod to begin with. Their Roman upbringing would have been drastically different than that of Herod's. The lack of a relationship between father and sons, as well as possible fear that his children would seek revenge on him for executing their mother, fueled Herod's suspicion and led him to execute the 2 by strangulation, purportedly for disloyalty. With this, 3 generations of Hasmonean lineage, which Herod had so desperately wanted to be part of with his marriage to Mariamne, have been executed. One can't help but wonder what emotions Herod felt in his final days as he stood in his palace in Jerusalem and stared up at the Tower of Mariamne that he built at the beginning of his reign. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and check out my other videos of the Levant.